It's been a big point of contention, obviously, for an awfully long time now, and it will be a real key issue that's going to swing voters potentially at the next general election.
Indeed.
Do you actually believe that Rishi Sunak wants to stop the boats, or is this just a culture war issue?
I think he'd like to. I just don't think he has any clue how to do it. I don't think he has the courage to do it, and I don't think he has the sort of the personality to drive the effort to make it happen. I think if it was an easy thing to do, he'd probably do it. He's hoping it will sort of solve itself, I think.
Just like with inflation.
Well, yeah,
and
like
HS2.
everything. I mean, you know, and I have a particular problem with the whole generation of politicians at the moment who say that they're going to do something and they haven't yet worked out how they're going to do it, or whether even they know how or can do. But that's what's happened. So he found himself in a difficult situation, and he's got a Home Secretary now who's equally in a difficult situation. Plus, there's a lot of politics going on in the Conservative Party. Can it be stopped? Yes, 100%.
How?
It can
How?
be. Well, I've stopped this in other countries. And what we have got here, we have got an incoherent set of structures that are not working together. There is no coherent set of strategic national objectives in relation to our borders. Remember, we've got cocaine and heroin and firearms coming across the borders as well as people. And we've got no unified structure to deal with it. We've got 8 different agencies operating patrol boats in the Channel, for example. Now, you look at Finland, you look at Canada, you look at the United States, you look at Denmark. That doesn't exist. You look at Albania, Italy. They bring it all together. Would you have a police force to deal with road traffic collisions, another one to deal with burglaries, another one to deal with violent crime and so on? No, you have one police force that does all the patrolling and all the enforcement.
Actually, I'm going to jump in. Actually, if we had more police on the streets of this country, things would get done. And I don't disagree with you. Claire,
but we want that cohesion on our borders as well.
Where I come from on this, and what frustrates me enormously, is we sit and we have debates about this. Oh, look, what about the refugees? And then somebody else will say they're illegal migrants. There's obviously a split. That's a fact, right? I find it astonishing. In 2023, and I'm not blaming Rishi Sunak, I'm blaming all of them. There seems no coherent long-term thought. This processing system is an absolute disgrace. I will nail my colours to the mast, whether Nicola gets angry or not. I have no idea why we're paying the French 500 million quid a year to let people who would obviously prefer a 4-star hotel than a tent on a beach in Calais come here. Why are we so, in 2023, a joke? Because we are a joke in this country with immigration, aren't we?
I don't think there's the will to sort it out. And I think you sort of nailed that on the head. There isn't a cohesive strategy. Nobody wants to go out there and say, this is what we need to do, and be quite hard line on the facts, because if they become hard line, they get called racist. If they're too lenient, they're called lefties and wets and all the rest of it. So they're more concerned about the language surrounding it than actually solving the problem. And it is bigger than just what's coming across the Channel. You have to look at what's going on in the Middle East, North Africa, over into the Middle East, into the rest of Europe, because that is where your issues lie. What is going on in Africa at the moment is fueling an awful lot of immigration going into Italy, and we are going to see that coming across. So unless you work on a global scale, you aren't going to sort this. And all of the rhetoric about stopping the boats is absolute nonsense.
Henry, you said earlier, or you spoke earlier about having a very fractious patrol, and that's of kind of no use. It doesn't help us solve this issue. However, I watched an investigation over the weekend and in which some of the people smugglers were interviewed. And they actually said that after the UK left the European Union, things became a lot easier for them, because we no longer share data on fingerprints. We no longer share crime data on criminals who are moving around Europe. Was it a mistake to have left the EU? Ultimately, small boats crossings wasn't a crisis when we were back in the EU.
No, but look, where this has been going on for decades.
But not until 2016 did it really kick off.
Wrong, I'm sorry, I have to correct you. From 2003 to 2006, I headed up the UK's efforts to disrupt people smuggling operations, moving people to the European Union and the UK. And that was down in the Southern Balkans. It was a major effort. And indeed, what happened was Tony Blair pulled all the funding of that in 2006. And it stopped. What we've got to have now, and Claire's absolutely right, we've got to have a layered approach. It's got to be international, global. It's got to be regional, the European sort of continent or region. It's got to be in France. It's got to be in the Channel, and it's got to be here. And what we've got at the moment is a piecemeal approach. There's a headline or a bit of a scandal about one thing, and so the government focuses on that and says, right, we've got to solve this. There's no coherence. There's no
You talk about
strategy.
coherence. Let's not bring up Brexit, but I'm absolutely sure we're being punished. Why the hell would the French do anything to stop 25,000, the threshold's been achieved already this year, coming to this country when we're giving them 500 million quid to do nothing? That's the problem. Claire, you said something that I wanted to pick up on. You said that it's about somebody going out and being strong. Hold on to your hats. I am not supporting Suella Braverman or Rwanda, but I'm going to bring up my other pet hate. Quite how a democratically elected government in this country, whether it's the Tories or, I suspect, Labour one day soon, right, are being taken to court by the blob, the civil service who don't like a policy, Rwanda, whatever you think about it. It's not for the civil service to get in the way of elected politicians making decisions. It's down to the government, and then people vote them in or out. That's another thing that's causing problems on this, isn't it?
Well, no, if you're talking about the ECHR, which seems to be the great big hot potato at the moment, it isn't going to solve this crisis just by leaving it. It is one part of what the European Court will look at. And just because it's got the word European in front of it, we needn't get all frothy over it, because it doesn't mean the same thing as the European Union. And we are one of the 46 signatories to this, and we were one of the founding members. But it isn't going to solve it.
The world's changed, hasn't it? The world's changed.
Yes, the world has changed, but that's why you actually need to look at the Refugee Convention. Rather than banging on about the ECHR, which is a real red herring in all of this, yes, you're right to look at the Convention on Human Rights and look at what a refugee is and how you define that in this day and age.
But
because
people
I think
won't,
that's
will they?
right to
Because
do so.
people will say they're all refugees, and other people will say they're all migrants. That is absolutely factually
Which is
wrong.
why you need to work together to work out what it is that you're looking
Wouldn't
at.
disagree with that.
One of the issues with this, and I've worked sort of at a very high level on treaties and conventions. And one of the problems is nobody wants to open these things up, because if it's opened up because the UK's got this concern, then Panama will turn around and say, well, we've got this concern, we want to talk about that. And you end up then with everything in limbo, and you end up with maybe decades of negotiation. And that's why the organisations that are the custodians of these conventions and treaties don't like or resist the opening up of them. And I have to say, the UNHCR has been quoted many times as opposing what Suella Braverman has said. Have we heard anything from the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees themselves in Geneva? No, it's just the UK element. Just point that out. Just, if I may very briefly go back to the previous point, yes, it's been going on for decades, this, but actually there's been changes in it. So the Libyan crisis, 2014, a massive influx of migrants across the Mediterranean from North Africa. And we saw people coming in through trucks. There were measures taken there, partly successful. And then that, with this, if you don't foresee the problem, if you haven't got a really strategic vision, if you close one option to the organised criminals, then they will exploit another. And what we didn't do at the time, I was saying, we need to secure the whole of the shore of North France, not just Calais, because otherwise they'll go to boats. And now we've got them coming round from West Africa on boats, and into Ireland. And in fact, we've got people coming into Ireland, Southern Ireland now, from West Africa, going into the north, coming across here, and then catching...
Refugees are illegal migrants.
Well, I don't yet know, but what I do know for that route, but they're coming into Ireland, Southern Ireland, into Northern Ireland, into the mainland UK, and then catching boats and going the other way, because it's easier from West Africa to do that route.
But let's say...
all of this is wide open, and the big problem is there is no control, really, security and control and management of our borders, let alone migration.
Let's say Suella gets her way and we leave the ECHR. It's not going to stop the boats. OK, the Rwanda plan potentially will go ahead, but that can only in itself provide for, what, a few hundred spaces, and then the people smugglers ultimately know that, you know, Rwanda's full, we can carry on coming to the UK. Surely the answer here, increase your processing capacity. But they're just not doing that.
I don't get that, Nick. I'm so with you. How is our processing... How is it that it takes It's so badly organised. There's 170,000 people waiting, of which how many have slipped into our societies and communities? And it's ridiculous. I mean, we should be able, as a country in 2023, the 5th largest or most successful in the world, to process whether these people are genuine refugees. In brackets, we showed the country we were during the Ukraine crisis, close brackets. But if you're over here screwing us when we're all in the middle of a cost of living crisis, you can do one. That's got to be the approach.
But the other side of this, yes, you've got to process people, but also you've got to have the capacity to be able to return them. And if you don't have returns agreements in place, which the UK doesn't have very many, let's be honest, because they should have been out there negotiating those returns agreements.
Who should have been?
The government.
And
the
the
Home
Foreign Office
Secretary.
together.
And the Foreign Office, that's why I say...
Why didn't they?
Because she's too busy going over to America, giving speeches about multiculturalism.
Surely before Bravo, right?
There's been years of this. There have been years of people not actually doing it. And since we left the European Union, we should have been working with those European counterparts to make returns agreements with those. Now, there are some countries that you aren't going to be able to return to. I don't think you're going to turn women to Afghanistan, for argument's sake, or to Iraq or to Iran. So you've got to...
Males back to Albania would be a start, wouldn't it?
Well,
but they've done that, haven't they?
Yeah,
Because we already had that in place. But she put another
lots
one.
back to France. Do you want to read some of these text messages? These are really...
If I may,
amazing.
look, one of the problems is that lack of strategy again. Because if you've got a strategy, you pull in all the government departments, you say, this is what we've got to do. Foreign Office, these are your tasks. Home Office, those tasks. But there's not that leadership at the central level of government. And without that, it's not going to work. If you don't have the combined effort, working together, unity of effort, if you like, of those government agencies. And in this country, we are appalling at that.
I agree. Listen, we asked you to get involved, and thank you so much indeed. Do you want to read the first one? It's going to make me feel so good if you do.
Go on then. Mark says, Suella Braverman is the one to take us forward to stop all this, but she needs backing from a lazy PM who doesn't care.
Nicholas, why do we always allow a small majority in this country to stop government policy and the strong wishes of that majority, guys? This is a weak government defeating itself.
And Jane says, I think instead of pitting vulnerable communities such as asylum seekers and those utilising state support against each other, why aren't we holding tax avoiders to account and taxing those who can afford more? Let's use Prince Andrew's money to process some asylum seekers.
I wouldn't disagree.
instead.
Finally, Alexander, ditch the ECHR, fly those that are here out to Rwanda and get the Royal Navy to patrol the English Channel. I'm still seething, just very quickly to finish, the footage from about 2 months ago when a boat of migrants was somewhere between France and England, and the French Navy followed them and sort of went, off you go, and the RNLA came and got them. That makes us look ridiculous. Why do the French have them?
Well,
I need to have a cup of tea. I'm starting to combust.
You need